Due to the September 11th, 2001 attack on America, all public tours of the Hanford site have been canceled until further notice.
In its top secret wartime effort, the federal government chose a site along the Columbia River to produce plutonium for nuclear weapons. This site, known as Hanford, is now the greatest storehouse of toxic waste in the Western Hemisphere.
Months prior to the events of September 11th, a physician-sponsored public tour explored the Hanford Nuclear Reservation. Members of the public, including an artist and 2 doctors, toured the facility by land. Others, including a grandmother, opted to take the tour by river.
I know nothing about Hanford. I am a painter. The reason why I want to go to Hanford is to become more aware of what it looks like. I envision a deserted, a lot like what I've seen pictures of, like Chernobyl.
I've never been to Hanford before, so I'm not sure exactly what's there or what to expect. As medical professionals, we take a scientific viewpoint of things, and there's 2 sides to any story. And by going to Hanford, we may get a little bit more of the other side.
I go to Hanford with some degree of prejudice because I feel like I have studied enough about it to have some strong feelings, but I hope to have a fair and open view of what is actually there. I've wanted to do more than just send them money. I wanted to actually become individually involved.
We were in such a hurry to develop the atomic bomb. I remember Dr. Glenn Seaborg, who was a co-inventor of plutonium, said he always gets asked, why didn't you do something with that high-level waste? He said, we didn't have time, that Hitler was on the trail of the bomb also.
I'm 78 years old, and more than 50 of those years have been spent in the shadow of the atomic age. I was originally kind of a tag-along on the boat trip because I really wanted to see what a major nuclear facility looked like. And a quotation from J. Robert Oppenheimer, who was the chief architect of the Manhattan Project, came into my mind. He was quoting a piece that Krishna had said, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
The Hanford Nuclear Reservation was built in 1943 as part of the Manhattan Project. 8 kilograms of plutonium that were produced at Hanford were put in the bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki. While opinions abound about the worth of Hanford's past activities, there is a regional consensus about the importance of the threats posed by 50 years' worth of waste produced during the Cold War. When people ask me why they should care about Hanford, it's a real easy question to answer. People should care about Hanford because it's the single largest environmental project in the history of mankind. And the site rests right on the Columbia River, which is the lifeblood of the Northwest. On top of all that, it's incredibly expensive. Hanford spends over $3 million a day, 365 days a year. I've followed issues at the Hanford Nuclear Reservation for over a decade. I often lead tours of the reservation. I recently had an opportunity to lead just such a tour with Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility.
The overall impression that I had initially was that it's still a sort of guarded, secretive place. There were lots of guards around, lots of security.
It felt like I should be at a dump, but there was no garbage. You know, you couldn't quite see the waste. Truckloads of, dirt was just going in and out. It didn't feel like there was a lot of progress going on. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't actually, it wasn't very tangible.
They were basically taking dirt by the dumpster load from one part where it had been contaminated near the river and trucking it a few miles to bury it in a pit. And I think it was impressive that you had this area, basically the size of a small city, that was being filled with contaminated dirt. We saw another pit where they take nuclear submarines that are decommissioned.
Oh, submarine reactors. Okay.
Up at Bremerton, they just basically cut the two ends off the sub, weld those two ends back together and scuttle that, put the reactor on a barge. It comes up the Columbia River and it's dumped here.
The former Hanford Worker Program was instigated by the Department of Energy to see if people received any injuries from the radiation directly from Hanford. Now there's always a possibility of an accident happening. A tank blew up and a hole occurred in the building out on the Hanford project.
Hanford contains over 60% of the Department of Energy's high-level radioactive defense waste. Nearly 70 of Hanford's 177 waste tanks have leaked their contents to the soil. Some of these leaks have already reached the groundwater, which leads to the Columbia River.
The main emotional impact of seeing Hanford was its huge size. The distances between the plants, the fact that those areas were all contaminated, the closeness of it all to the Columbia River.
We did have some leaking tanks out at Hanford. After about 10 years, some of the wells and some of the tanks would fail, and high-level contamination has leaked into the ground at some of these locations. And they've transferred the leaking tanks, the high-level waste from there over to double-wall tanks, which are much safer. But in the meantime, some of that contamination did get into the underground water table, and the underground water table goes to the Columbia River. And we do have some tritium in the river out there now.
Some of the Hanford reactors and their waste storage areas are called basins, and they're sitting up there with their toes practically in the Columbia River. The area along the Columbia River is called the Hanford Reach. It contains sacred Native American sites, picturesque cliffs, and rare wildlife.
We drifted along the Columbia River that bitterly cold day, and I remember seeing the cranes on one side of the river. Very elegant and lovely. But on the other side was Hanford. Low-keyed, utilitarian buildings. There was something awfully sinister about them. We stopped at N-Reactor, the last of the U.S. plutonium production reactors. It seems the Department of Energy could gain public acceptance by giving cheap electricity that partly comes from the production of nuclear weapons. N-Reactor was closed in 1986. The problem was that N-Reactor was the prototype that they built Chernobyl from.
Right now, the major mission at Hanford is cleanup. The government's already spent about $15 billion on cleanup and plans to spend as much as $100 billion more in the next 50 years. WPSR and citizens groups, as well as the Hanford Advisory Board, are promoting a national dialogue on nuclear waste policy with an eye towards putting it on the political agenda in the United States.
It's a little upsetting to know how slow things are moving in terms of cleaning things up there. We know that there's various places where nuclear materials are being stored, all on an interim basis, waiting until we can find some place to put them permanently, because we're talking about things that are going to be highly radioactive and highly dangerous for thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years.
The thing that impacted me the most about the whole experience was that they knew they had to clean up by 2018, but we don't know how we're going to do it yet. It really dawned on me that it was going to be a never-ending problem, I mean, it's probably one thing after another, and there's probably more problems that they don't even know about yet that are going to happen. The lobbyists' idea of progress, would be to make more money, and they believe that it's going to help the economy, it's going to create jobs, and it's the American way. I just thought, oh, well, that's how it works, oh, I get it now. So then, and that's when I felt helpless.
I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that a lot of good things are happening at Hanford. We did see very good efforts being made. Under the pressure of the Second World War, it was thought that the waste could be taken care of in the future. To do so now, 50 years later, hoping that a new technology will occur and we'll have a better way of taking care of the waste 10 years from now, is, I think, a disastrous mistake. It is too much in the interests of the public health and the environmental health to give up.
You do feel sometimes helpless about big issues like this. By joining a group of other individuals who are equally as concerned about the issue, that working together we can have a larger impact than any one of us can have individually.
Hanford, as the ancestral wintering ground of the Yakima, is an area of great cultural significance and a place abundant in natural resources at the confluence of the region's three great rivers. Damage to this land from nuclear operations has happened in the most fleeting amount of time, sometimes by ignorance, often by willful neglect. It is still worth asking today, what has been done to this land? And after 8 years and many billions of dollars spent, what has been done to restore this land? Leaving toxic waste in place sounds more like no cleanup than accelerated cleanup, but it is part of a national strategy called long-term stewardship. The main component of long-term stewardship involves passing the responsibility for these hazards onto future generations.